Okay, so you sent over some really interesting stuff on autism spectrum disorder.
Specifically about like understanding the different levels of support needs.
Right.
And I think this is really interesting because it's one of those things where,
A lot of people think they kind of got it figured out, but it's
yeah,
way more nuanced than just a single label, right?
absolutely.
Yeah. What we often see are these aha moments
Yeah.
as people realize just how diverse the spectrum truly is.
Right. We've got excerpts from Cheap ABA, Understanding the Levels of Autism, to guide us.
And this source really emphasizes how we're moving away from thinking about autism in these.
Rigid categories like the old diagnosis of Asperger's.
Right.
It's all about the spectrum now.
Precisely. And the DSM-5, which is kind of like the official handbook,
For diagnosing mental health conditions, made this shift.
to a spectrum approach,
Yeah.
to acknowledge the huge range of experiences within autism.
It's about recognizing that everyone's experience on the spectrum is unique,
So it's not like a ladder.
where you're more autistic or less autistic depending on where you fall. It's more like that sound mixer analogy the source uses.
You know where you've got different levels for different traits.
Okay.
Someone might have the volume turned up on certain characteristics.
And it might be lower on others.
It creates this completely unique profile for each person.
Oh, that's such a good way to think about it.
It's like everyone has their own personalized mix.
Right, or think of it like a constellation,
It's not about how bright any single star is.
but rather the unique pattern they create together.
I love that.
So the source breaks things down into levels 1, 2, and 3.
But before we jump into like what each level represents,
Can we talk about why these levels even exist in the first place?
that's a really important point.
These levels are meant to give a starting point for understanding.
The types of support someone might need.
Okay.
And I want to be crystal clear on this.
They are not meant to be these rigid boxes.
It's not about slapping a label on someone and calling it a day.
Real life is so much more complex,
We don't want to get hung up on the labels themselves.
but rather use them as a way to start thinking about the why.
Oh.
Why is this level of support needed?
And what does that actually look like in someone's day-to-day life?
Because ultimately it's about understanding and meeting someone's individual needs.
You got it.
So, for example, when we talk about level 1.
Often described as requiring support.
Okay.
The source mentions inflexible behavior as a common trait.
Okay, but what does inflexible behavior really mean in this context?
I feel like that could be interpreted in a lot of different ways,
It definitely can.
instead of just thinking of it as being stubborn.
Imagine how a seemingly simple change in routine could be incredibly distressing.
For someone who thrives on predictability,
Okay.
take breakfast, for instance,
If someone at level 1 is used to having the same cereal every morning,
and suddenly it's not available.
it can trigger a level of anxiety and distress that others might find hard to understand.
Wow, that makes you think about the why behind the behavior, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It's not about being difficult. It's about that deep-seated need.
For sameness and routine,
And that inflexibility often stems from challenges with social communication.
which the source highlights as a key area where people at level 1 might need support.
So it's not that people at this level can't communicate at all.
Precisely.
It's more nuanced than that.
They might have difficulty initiating interactions
Maintaining conversations or picking up on those subtle social cues.
that many of us take for granted.
And how might that, like, play out in, say, a social gathering?
Imagine someone at level 1 trying to navigate a crowded party.
The noise, the constant chatter, all those unfamiliar faces,
Yeah.
it can create a feeling of sensory overload,
Right.
making it incredibly difficult to focus on any one conversation.
Or figure out how to join in naturally.
It's like all those unspoken rules of social interaction that
Many of us pick up on without even realizing it.
Exactly.
Also the things that someone at level 1,
might find truly baffling.
and that's where support comes in,
Not to fix the person.
but to provide them with the tools and strategies
Yeah.
to navigate those situations more comfortably and confidently.
And I imagine early intervention is key here.
Absolutely.
The sooner we can equip individuals with those social skills,
Right.
coping mechanisms, the more empowered they'll be to handle the challenges.
That come with navigating a world that isn't always designed with their needs in mind.
It's about building that foundation early on,
So we've talked about level 1.
which the source describes as requiring support.
What about level 2 requiring substantial support?
Where do the distinctions lie?
At level 2, those support needs become more pronounced.
Okay.
The source points to more significant challenges in social communication.
While someone at level 1 might struggle with certain social cues,
Someone at level 2 might have more limited verbal skills
Well,
and
fine.
rely on different ways of communicating altogether.
so their communication differences are more central to their experience.
Does the source elaborate on why that might be?
It's important to remember that this isn't about an inability to learn or communicate.
It's about recognizing that communication might take different forms instead
Yeah.
of spoken language,
Someone at level 2 might use visual aids gestures.
or even sign language to express their needs and connect with others.
And that's where things like speech therapy and exploring
Alternative communication methods become crucial, right?
precisely.
It's about finding the approach that best suits the individual's strengths
Right.
and allows them to communicate effectively.
Because everyone deserves to have their voice heard.
Couldn't agree more.
And it's not just about communication.
The source also notes that inflexible behavior,
Those strong reactions to disruptions in routine
Yeah.
tend to be more pronounced at level 2.
imagine if you have difficulty communicating your needs or understanding.
Why a change is happening is simple substitution, like
Having a different teacher for the day can feel completely overwhelming
Right.
and lead to anxiety or even outbursts
it's like all those little uncertainties that we take for granted.
are magnified when you don't have the tools to navigate them.
So in a way, those behavioral challenges can be a form of communication in themselves.
Exactly.
It's a way of expressing discomfort or distress.
When other methods might not be available.
Right.
That's why creating predictable routines and providing visual schedules.
Can be so beneficial for individuals at this level.
Okay.
It helps minimize those anxieties by making the day more understandable and manageable.
And I would imagine that this need for structure and predictability.
Extends beyond just the individual.
Absolutely.
Families and caregivers likely need support.
In understanding how to create these supportive environments as well.
It's a team effort.
And that's why having access to resources and information like
Yeah.
what this cheap ABA source provides is so crucial
It's about empowering everyone involved with the knowledge and tools they need.
to support their loved one effectively.
So we've got level 1, requiring support, and level 2,
Requiring substantial support. What does the source have to say about level 3?
requiring very substantial support.
This is where we see individuals facing the most significant challenges.
Across different aspects of their lives.
Okay.
The source uses the phrase extensive support in all areas.
Which might sound daunting.
But it really just highlights the need for a more comprehensive and individualized approach.
Can you give me a sense of what extensive support might look like in real-world terms?
What areas of life might someone at this level need assistance with?
We're talking about potential needs in areas like daily living activities.
Okay.
Things like dressing, eating, or bathing.
As well as communication and behavior management.
Individuals at this level might have very limited verbal communication skills.
And may engage in repetitive behaviors as a way of self-soothing or communicating their needs.
So it becomes even more vital at this level to move beyond just addressing
One specific challenge, and really think holistically about how to best support.
the whole person within the context of their life.
Precisely.
It's about understanding that every behavior, every interaction is a form of communication.
And it's about finding ways to respond to those communications with compassion and understanding.
Even when they might be challenging.
It strikes me that at this level, the well-being of the individual.
And the well-being of their family or caregivers are so deeply intertwined.
You're absolutely right.
The source touches on this briefly, but the impact on families can be significant.
Caring for someone with intensive needs requires immense dedication, patience.
And often around-the-clock support.
And it's a reminder that support isn't just about the individual on the spectrum.
It's about building a network of support that encompasses everyone involved.
Exactly.
It's about recognizing that families need support too,
Right.
access to resources, respite care, and
Simply the space to process their own emotions and experiences.
it's like a ripple effect.
When one person's needs are understood and supported, it creates a more
it's real
supportive
fair.
environment for everyone around them.
And that's why understanding these different levels of support is so important.
It's not about labeling or categorizing individuals.
It's about building a framework for empathy and informed action.
You know, as we've been talking about this, I keep thinking back to,
And that resource you mentioned, cheap ABA,
it really gets you thinking if someone in your life, maybe a child,
or a friend was newly diagnosed,
Yeah.
wouldn't having this knowledge about the different levels help you become a better advocate for them?
absolutely, it equips you to have more informed conversations.
With educators, therapists, and even family members.
You're better able to articulate the individual's needs
Right.
and advocate for the specific types of support that will be most beneficial at each stage.
It's like instead of just saying, My child needs help with communication.
You can say, my child's at level 2 and would benefit from exploring
Exactly.
augmentative communication methods like visual supports or PECs.
It gives you a starting point for those conversations.
It moves you beyond general terms
Yeah.
and into the realm of specific strategies and interventions.
And it empowers you to ensure the individual is receiving the most appropriate and effective support possible.
And that's powerful.
It's about understanding that autism isn't a one-size-fits-all experience.
What might be incredibly beneficial for someone at level 1
Right.
might not be the right fit for someone at level 3.
Precisely.
It's about meeting people where they're understanding their unique needs and strengths.
And tailoring our support accordingly.
Because ultimately, every single person on the spectrum,
Regardless of their support needs, deserves to be seen, heard, and valued for who they are.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And that's what I hope listeners take away from this deep dive.
It's about moving beyond those misconceptions and stereotypes.
And embracing the beautiful diversity that exists within the autism community.
It's about celebrating those differences.
Honoring those unique experiences.
And building a world that is more inclusive and supportive for everyone.
And who knows, this might be just the beginning.
Maybe this deep dive sparks a conversation or encourages someone to learn more.
Or maybe it even inspires someone to reach out and offer support to a family who needs it.
There you go. That's
Yeah.
the power of digging deeper.
Asking questions and really engaging with these important topics.
And never underestimating the impact that even a little bit of understanding can have.
Beautifully said. Well, on that note, it's time to surface from this incredibly insightful deep dive.
A huge thank you to you, our expert, for guiding us through these nuanced waters.
And to you listening, keep those conversations going.
Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep seeking out those aha moments.
Until next time, happy diving.